Okay, I think we are live. I'll just get Jane to provide a thumbs up in the comments so that we know that we are actually live and I'm not just going to be talking to myself, which I do quite often, as most of you probably realise. Okay, so what is the date? 21st of July, basically. And effectively, it's another Monday, which must mean it's a Chen chat. So we'll just wait for a few people to dive on, and then we'll get going. Okay, so this week what we're going to talk about the Watchers. I think it was a question that popped up from, I can't remember who, someone basically in the last lot of conversations that we had. Jane's just mentioned that we're online. I'm assuming you can talk to me. A radio mic check obviously says that you can hear me. I sound okay with the right speaker, microphone and such like. And we're only 1 minute late, which is good, but which is quite interesting actually, because I'm normally late, as most of you tend to realise. And Jane did remind me about 7 minutes ago that I had 7 minutes, which was plenty of time for me to change my t-shirt and get ready. So this week we're going to talk about the Watchers, basically. It came up as a conversation. It was Andrea P, as Jane's just reminded me. I was going to say hi to Dave. Good to see you, Dave. Thanks for the heads up in the week that the website was down, which was handy. I think it was a general Plesk update, Ollie told me, some update that basically took down millions of websites all over the world. So Ollie had a very stressful day on Monday because Jane woke me up to say the website was down. And obviously Ollie runs all our tech, our websites and things. So he got the job of trying to sort that out, as well as all of the other websites that he runs, which of course were all down. So Ollie's Monday wasn't particularly good. So thanks for that, Dave. It was good heads up. Point us in the right direction. Hi to Sarah and Michelle. Good to see you guys on here too. Greetings from Arizona. If you do want to put in the chat where you're from, it's always good for those people that are kind of watching, just to see where the audience is from, really. It's good to get an idea of who's here, where you guys are from, where you live, what country you're in, that kind of thing. It's always good to see. Everyone's nosy, aren't they, basically, I think. So people like to know where everyone lives, effectively. I know when we do podcasts and things, it's one of the things that always comes up is the whereabouts are you from conversation. So yeah, so pop that in the chat. So this week we're going to talk about, so the question came in from Andrea P, as Jane reminded me, about the Watchers. So what are the Watchers? They're talked about quite a lot. I think there's lots of Facebook groups and things that talk about the Watchers, but I guess most of us probably don't really know what that means, who they are, and what the kind of context to that conversation really is, I guess. So if we just step backwards, really, so if we step sort of beyond the veil of the mainstream history, again, we're kind of going off on our tangent as we do. So the mainstream has its version of history, again, and I think there's obviously lots of different versions of everything in life, really. And I think my advice is always to go with the one that you kind of resonate with. So when you hear people talking, if the things that they're talking about don't really kind of align with you, then probably sidestep it. If it aligns with you and it sounds reasonable, sensible, and it's kind of within your vibration, then, you know, maybe consider aligning yourself or doing your own research, of course, which is the key. And I think this is one of the things that we promote ourselves, is don't listen to me, don't listen to Chen, don't listen to anyone apart from yourself, but of course do your own research, which I think is a really important thing to do, so that when you make decisions, when you have opinions, they're based upon your own understanding and time and research that you've put into the content of the conversation that you're interested in, really, which of course is good. So stepping beyond that veil of mainstream history, and we're going to venture into the enigmatic realms of God's ancient overseers and bloodlines, I guess. So I'm going to be a bit careful of the wording that we use. We're keen not to get kind of Facebook jailed for stepping onto certain landmines that we all know are sort of lying around all over social media these days. So we're going to kind of try to keep this generic. I've had a quick chat with Chen and told him the same, to try and be slightly generic about the conversation so that we don't end up being banned off Facebook or something, or YouTube. So hopefully that we can kind of navigate that playing field with the right content. So basically, in this sort of episode, that's what we're going to explore. We're going to explore the powerful kind of triad, really, I guess, of beings that are talked about in different kind of scholarly papers and such like. And I guess this conversation has probably sort of fascinated scholars, mystics, and also, of course, conspiracy researchers for generations. So I always laugh at the word conspiracy, because I think the word conspiracy always kind of brings up this kind of tin hat wearing individual, which I kind of consider myself to be, really, because I like to wear tin hats. I like tin foil, so that kind of fits me nicely into that category, which is good, because again, I like to research different things. So content and areas that get talked about, I don't tend to kind of go with it unless I've done my own research and background. And if that puts me in the kind of conspiratorial tin foil hat camp, then I'm more than happy to be there, really, because it's based upon my own understanding, research, and that kind of stuff. So just going to say hi to Mimi, Catherine, and Joanna. Good to see you guys on board. So we're talking about the Watchers, the Nephilim, the Anunnaki. So these are kind of big words, big conversations in the kind of spiritual areas. We've all heard people talk about these things, and obviously from a spiritual perspective, again, different versions of events, I guess. So I guess we're going to begin the journey tonight, or this afternoon in my case, with the Watchers. This was the question that Andrea kind of prompted, so this is the question that we're kind of dropping to Chen. So what are the Watchers? When we talk about the Watchers, where did they come from? Where is that conversation? Who are they? What are they watching? Are they watching us? Are we watching them? Like, who's watching who, I guess, really? So I guess the Watchers are kind of defined, really, from a spiritual perspective to be that kind of celestial beings. I think they're described in the Book of Enoch, somewhere along the lines of, and again in sort of mysterious ancient text that kind of has been omitted, I think, from some versions of the Bible. So these beings were originally sent to watch over humanity. That seems to be the general gist of the research that I've done, really. And they're considered to be guardians or guides, maybe interdimensional kind of observers of planet Earth. But the different research kind of points us to the fact they kind of broke some divine laws set somewhere, descended to Earth. Basically, rather than watching what was happening here, they kind of engaged with human beings, and obviously primarily with women, and then of course created an offspring of themselves. And that offspring, I think, is kind of termed the Nephilim, basically. So these were kind of giant hybrids of the Watchers that we talk about, that kind of connected with us as human beings, kind of crossed those two species, if you like. And then we had these kind of giant hybrids that were kind of feared warriors, and they had a lot of symbolic and forbidden knowledge and kind of unchecked power. And the kind of understanding is they kind of run amok, really, on the planet for quite a long time, which kind of takes us into the kind of deeper dive on the Watchers and that sort of subject of the Nephilim. And I was interested in this topic myself, actually, quite a while ago. So myself and Ollie went off to London to a conference about the Anunnaki, oddly. And there were a lot of people talking about that subject that were going to be flying in from all over the world. So it was based in London. It was supposed to be kind of a really interesting conference. And I actually knew one of the guys that was talking there. So there was a guy called Dr. Alan Cox that I've kind of worked with before. He was going to be having a conversation. So I kind of messaged him and said, it'd be good to meet up at this conference, have a coffee, have a chat. We're interested in the Anunnaki and that aspect of things because, of course, it comes into the work that we do. Because obviously when we're clearing negative entities and energies, this kind of brings us into that same field, really. And it was quite interesting because most of the people that were presenting at that conference struggled to get there with different transport problems. Alan himself never managed to make it. He was ill before the conference, so he never turned up. And quite a lot of the people that kind of planned to go struggled to get there for the weekend. So it kind of showed me, really, sort of firsthand, that there is this kind of behind the scenes energy, I guess, or energy entities that are basically watching what we're doing, what we're talking about, and kind of pushing conversations away as much as they can. So this is going to be an interesting podcast to see if this podcast goes down inadvertently, or we have sound problems, or we have tech problems, because of course we are kind of treading on the feet of the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, and the Watchers in the way that we're talking about these things. And of course Chen's going to give us his opinion a bit later on. So really, if we look at the Book of Enoch, there's kind of a suppressed narrative, I guess, there, really. And we kind of need to ask, why was the account of the Watchers kind of removed from the mainstream scripture? And if it was removed, why was it removed? What would be the reason that that kind of narrative was taken out? And also, what does it kind of reveal about the origins of these sort of angelic rebellion and kind of alien contact, I guess, if we kind of try and frame it that way. I'm just going to say hi to lots of other people that joined. I think we've got Gregor. Good to see you, Gregor. Jen, good to see you. Pam. Agatha's here. Agatha's always here. Agatha's amazing because she's probably, I know you're in Singapore, you're awake at like 3 o'clock in the morning or something. So thanks for waking up to listen to our podcast. It's much appreciated. Kaz is here as well, and Kate Carney, good to see you. Well, not see you, Kate, but good that you're here listening. Ala Aziza and Nadine. So yeah, we've got quite a few people here that we recognise the names of. Love to have you guys on board listening, and if you've got questions, pop them in. I'll do my best to kind of answer them. Gregor was saying that he's watching me, which is quite funny, as we are talking about the Watchers. So Kaz is asking, are the Watchers the same as the shadow people? Well, I guess this is the thing. There's lots of conversation in the spiritual field about these different types of energies, entities that are kind of contacting or sort of in communication with us as a species, and they're kind of given different names, and there's different versions of different things. So we're going to try and get onto some of those things. So I think really, obviously, the Book of Enoch is kind of where we're starting off. That seems to be the starting place, that this narrative that these Watchers, these kind of ET alien species that kind of crossed with us, has been taken out of. And then the Nephilim, as we know, again, there's a lot of information on the internet about the Nephilim. So they were the kind of hybrids that were created. So these were the children, effectively, of what we would call the Watchers, effectively. And these were, so the Watchers were having children with humans, and of course that hybrid race it was, and he's called the Nephilim. And we talk about stories of giants, basically huge big beings that walking about. And if we think about David and Goliath in the Bible, that's that same story, that you've got kind of Goliath, you've got this big, huge, giant kind of being, effectively. David's this small human. And obviously we all kind of know about the story that David fought Goliath and used the catapult and that kind of stuff. So I'm digging deep now, my kind of history, because I can't remember a lot of this from the times that I was at school. But remember David and Goliath as that story, and that obviously connects to this concept of these Nephilim hybrids, basically, that kind of were around at the time. And obviously, if you look across history and lots of the countries, there tends to be stories. And of course, there's lots of films and things been made of these kind of titans from Greece, basically, and the Rakshas from India. And obviously ancient gods of Mesoamerica as well. And they all seem to be these big giants. And I know that there are people in Africa that have done lots of work looking at kind of the ground, and they found these huge big giant footprints. I think Michael Tellinger did some work on that, basically, or he's still there doing that type of work. And he's written a lot of things about these kind of giant footprints that were obviously pressed into soft soil, soft mud, or volcanic ash or something back in the day. And of course, it's then gone hard, but you can actually see the toes and the footprint in the soil. So it does kind of point to the fact that at some point on the planet's history, certainly in Africa, there are these kind of giant footprints that look like beings that were really, really tall, a lot taller than us. And of course, if we think about a lot of the architecture around the world, you know, we still don't know how the pyramids were built. We still don't know how these huge big blocks have been kind of carried and put into place so well and so cleverly. And obviously, if we looked at the concept of these big giants that were around on the planet, then of course, you know, picking something very heavy up for us at kind of 6 foot tall, weighing kind of 10, 20 stone is difficult. But if you can imagine a giant that was, you know, maybe 10, 20 times bigger than us, stronger than us, they probably could do some of those things potentially. So again, it does raise this kind of conversation about the Nephilim as a hybrid kind of to ourselves, really. And I guess as well, we kind of move on to the concept of sort of alleged technological gifts, really, that the Watchers kind of gave humanity. So again, we look at things like metalworking, sort of cosmetics, astronomy, and probably war too, really, and the implications of that on this kind of rapid leap in human knowledge and development. So again, there had to be some information that came from someone or a race of beings that kind of jump-started humanity in the way that we see things. And again, you know, we're talking about the kind of the concept of the human evolvement. I guess that's a big conversation for us all, really. And one of the things I talked to Chen about a long time ago was this concept. It didn't really ever fit with my feeling, I guess, and understanding of the human kind of evolvement, that we kind of started off as monkeys and, you know, kind of lost our hair. Although some of us are still pretty hairy, to be fair, but kind of lost our hair and then ended up as this kind of humanoid Homo erectus. And I said to Chen, you know, what's your opinion? And he said, well, the theory doesn't work straight from the get-go, because if monkeys evolved to humans, there would be no monkeys left on the planet. But there are monkeys, so monkeys haven't evolved to humans. So I kind of laughed really at that conversation, and he laughed and thought it was really funny that you very quickly, the concept that a human, or, you know, we evolved from these kind of single cell creatures and then ended up on the beaches and then grew legs and this kind of stuff. The whole concept seems pretty ridiculous, I think, really, to my mind anyway, that there could be that. For me, it does kind of fit better in the fact that, you know, probably monkeys or apes were wandering around the planet, and then there was sort of some technological, biological and chemistry changes to the sort of the genome to make us human beings. So we were kind of made or created more than we evolved. And that's certainly my sort of feeling now, as I don't really go along with the kind of general mainstream view that we evolved from kind of single cell something amoeba to a human being. I think we were probably created by ETs with advanced understanding. And we've kind of done the same, remember. We've, you know, a long time ago, we talked about cloning sheep. And there was the sort of famous case of Dolly the sheep that was cloned, and you get an exact replica from kind of cellular division. So if we can do that with our sort of limited time on the planet, imagine a race of beings that have been around for thousands of years. They can probably do a lot more. And I guess that's kind of my feeling as to where we came from, really. So I think as we kind of traverse back, really, that sort of cradle of civilization goes back to kind of ancient Sumeria, and then the kind of conversation around the Anunnaki. We always end up going to that place, basically. So the general gist, I think, with the Anunnaki is that they were star beings that were described in kind of clay tablets, sort of over 6,000 years old, I think, or from thereabouts, that descended from the heavens, or possibly this 12th planet we talk about. So Nibiru, again, is banded around as this supposed 12th planet that's supposed to be in our solar system, that kind of swings in towards planet Earth every huge number of times in terms of years. But they were not really sort of symbolic gods, I guess, but kind of real ETs, real aliens with advanced technology. They understood genetics, astronomy, and probably energy manipulation. So if we kind of overlay that with the concept, we've got researchers like Stitchin, that he talks about humans were created through sort of genetic experimentation, sort of maybe the merging of their DNA with Homo erectus, which was kind of our friend the ape that was kind of wandering around the planet. And the concept being, or the general story is that happened to create a labor force to mine Earth for gold and resources. So again, lots of people in the spiritual arena have this understanding that basically the Anunnaki kind of arrived here from somewhere, probably Nibiru, and they basically then kind of used their advanced methods of biology and genetics to kind of create this hybrid species of kind of beings that were clever enough to do the work, but strong enough, obviously, too. And that was the kind of creation of Homo erectus, really. And that was kind of all done effectively to mine for gold and resources. And again, if we look in Africa, there's lots and lots of evidence that there's lots of mining that went on back in the day. And again, you know, we know that gold is obviously considered to be a very, very kind of prominent mineral on this planet. We know it's not easy to find, and obviously it's got a high value. So we can kind of imagine, when we look at sort of monatomic gold as well, that's used for different places, that may be an extraterrestrial intelligence, if it wanted to use gold or monatomic gold or gold in different formats, then it would kind of align with the concept that if there's gold on the planet here, but it's not kind of easy to find, then I guess what you would do is create a workforce to go off and start digging and mining to sort of find you the minerals that you need for the things that you need it for. Well, that's the kind of general concept, I think, really. So I guess just moving that forward. So the key points, I think, from my perspective, really. So the Anunnaki and sort of human DNA. So are we children, effectively, to this race of beings? And does our DNA kind of contain that genetic imprint of these kind of ancient visitors that we talked about that came to the planet, really. And I guess that aligns us with the royal bloodlines, because obviously we all know that across planet Earth we've got, a group of people that are considered to be royal, and they believe that they came from the kings and the queens and elite families, claim their descendants from the gods. And obviously a lot of the power structures contain these people. So certainly it's their belief that they've been put in place by this kind of overreaching hierarchy of ancient beings, really, to kind of run the planet for them. And I think that's the way that they see things. And we know that planet Earth has its control structures in place, and all of our politics and things kind of align to a hierarchy, and there's always a top of a hierarchy that I guess we don't see particularly, but we kind of know there must be one, because there always is. And I think for most of us, we kind of realize that politics is just kind of a sideshow, really, to a certain degree, just to keep people focused on sort of red and the blue, because there's always a red and blue. There's always two teams, they're always polar opposites, and they always disagree about everything. So, the kind of political sideshow is generally exactly that, I think, a sideshow. But we all kind of get to grips, I think, with the concept that behind the scenes, that's where the real control happens, and we never get to see who's in those places doing those things. But we can imagine, if we go along the concept that there were this group of ancient aliens that kind of descended here and created a bloodline of theirs, then they would leave their bloodline to basically run the planet for them effectively in some way. And then we've got this concept that there was a great flood. So the flood kind of came along, so it's talked about in the Bible. There's a lot of things about the Sumerian myths, etc. And again, countless kind of indigenous traditions talk about this huge big flood that happened that kind of reset or purged the earth, really, of this Nephilim influence. So whether they were taking over and controlling things in a negative way or doing negative things, but the understanding is, and of course in the Bible we talk about Noah's Ark, whereby the animals went in 2 by 2. So again, we could think that a portion of the population of animals, probably, and the people, maybe were removed from the planet whilst this great flood happened, which kind of purged the planet and gave us a kind of starting point to start again without this kind of Nephilim control. Because obviously we know that today, generally, we don't see giants walking around, apart from people that might be 6 or 7 feet, but we're certainly not seeing huge, big people that are kind of hundreds of feet tall. So we know that they're not still here in physical form. Whether they're here energetically or whether they have a presence is obviously a topic of kind of conversation. But we know that is the kind of physical aspect. And certainly doing the work that we do, we know that there is this overreaching negative element that is here kind of controlling the planet to a certain degree. And the things that they do and the control they have, again, is talked about, but of course there's never any kind of real proof. So people are left to come to their own conclusions, really. Okay, so that was the flood. So modern UFO sightings, again, from my perspective, if we're talking about kind of ETs and aliens, there are UFO sightings all over the world, all the time. Again, everything's probably a bit of a balance. So, I mean, some of those are probably our own technology that we probably don't get to see. I'm pretty sure the military is probably what they show us and what we get to use is probably two different things to a certain degree. So some of it's probably ours. And I think we can go along with the concept that there probably are ET, extraterrestrial, alien life forms that are based in or on the planet or under the planet, and they don't show themselves that often. But of course there are contact groups that will talk about having contactee experiences. People talk about being abducted, people talk about alien implants and such like. And again, we certainly see this from our work. We see quite a lot of people that have implants in their etheric field, not so much in their physical body, although I'm sure there probably are as well, because of course there's all sorts of things that we never really know go on. But certainly in the etheric field, Chen's continually removing and clearing control devices. That's his wording, control devices that are implanted into the etheric field. And that must come from some sort of extraterrestrial race, basically. And again, this kind of aligns us with this Anunnaki influence effectively. So I think from my point of view, that's kind of where I sort of align myself with, because obviously we see the impacts. And we kind of have seen and spoken to lots of people that have shown us pictures and images of what looks like chips inside their skin that they believe is some type of control device that's being kind of put in them. And again, quite a lot of people talk about contactee experiences under hypnosis. So again, you guys that are doing or hypnosis practitioners will probably come across people that will talk about having these sort of contactee experiences. So it's quite an interesting conversation. Again, in terms of proof, it's kind of, there's always both ways to view things. I just want to try and stick to the middle and assume that if these are the things that people say, they're probably the experiences that they believe they're having. And again, trying to prove things scientifically is always quite difficult. So I guess from that perspective, again, we talk about sort of grey aliens, abductions, fertility experiments, ancient genetic manipulation. There's a big conversation that we could kind of have for probably days and days, really, on the whole ET thing. But what we're touching on here is the Watchers. That was the kind of request from Andrea. So that's what I'm hoping to cover, that, aligning it with the Nephilim and obviously the Anunnaki. So I guess from my perspective, really, it's kind of closing down my part of the conversation, whereby that's where I think things are. And we've got this kind of awakening happening. People like yourselves that are interested in these topics, people are interested to hear about these things. And of course, we're quite fortunate to have Chen's opinion, really. So Chen will have his opinion of the things that we've talked about. Again, sometimes I don't agree with him, he doesn't agree with me. So it's not kind of case that we're both aligned completely. So that's kind of my version of things, and we'll see what kind of Chen has to say. So I guess it could be, I think there's a resurgence of the interest of these ancient beings. It's probably not a coincidence. Maybe it's part of like a cosmic remembering, that we're remembering who we are, where we're from. And I guess as humanity evolves spiritually and energetically, we're kind of being called, I guess, to reclaim the hidden knowledge and truth. And we're kind of surfacing a lot of who we are, where we're from, why are we here? All of these questions are questions that lots of us tend to have. And it's quite hard to get the information or the answers, or maybe there are no real answers. Maybe we need to kind of come to that finding ourselves, really. So I mean, that's one of the questions I used to kind of laugh at with Chen, really, around the concept of, as humanity evolves, kind of thing, and we kind of reclaim these hidden truths. Do we realize that we were created as servants effectively, or are we actually divine beings that were here and we're now waking up, we're being turned on spiritually? And there's a lot of conversation about the Schumann resonance of the planet and a lot of this incoming energy from the sun and sunspots and things that are kind of activating our DNA, and we're kind of turning and changing as well. So there's a lot of things, I think, going on. No one's probably got all of the answers, but again, we kind of need to go with what we believe or feel to be right. So I'm just going to move over to the comments. I can see there's a few comments here. So Gregor is asking, how can human beings become enlightened if they are a hybrid created by ETs? That's a good question. Thanks for popping that one in, Gregor. I probably don't have the answer, to be fair. I guess, again, it's down to our DNA, isn't it? If, radiation's coming into the planet and our DNA is being activated and we're kind of changing, then maybe we're able to unlock ourselves spiritually and kind of emotionally and obviously get into different spaces. And of course, working with different energies. I spend all my time talking to Chen, who we know is a deceased, discarnate spirit, effectively. He obviously borrows my physical body to do these chats and to have conversations. So for me, and certainly for our family, we're very used to the concept that we live very closely with spirit, and spirit is kind of part of our life. And these spiritual entities like Chen are kind of coming and going, providing us with their understanding teaching. And certainly for me, I've probably worked on 10,000 clients over 15 years, I guess, if we were looking at numbers. So I've feel obviously quite passionately that the entity Chen that I work with is very positive, and he's had a positive effect on so many of that 10,000 number of people. So again, from my perspective, there's always good and bad. Everything is always polarized. So in terms of becoming enlightened, I guess it depends upon the wording of enlightened. What does that mean for you? So I kind of feel enlightened in myself, that I kind of have got to a point spiritually that I can talk to other energies and entities. And obviously Chen kind of trance channel through me, can use my body to do things, and I can disappear and seem to come back most of the time, which is good. So hopefully that will be the case. So I guess enlightenment is a word that kind of is different for different people. And I think trying to find happiness and peace in yourself really is one of the key things. And I think this is the kind of the journey that we're all on. For me, it sort of feels that way, that if we can maintain our own spiritual sovereignty, if we are sovereign individuals in ourselves, then we have nothing connected to us apart from our own energy. And at that point, we should be able to find this kind of inner peace and follow our spiritual guidance and spiritual path, really, stepping aside from all of this negative control and lots of negativity. So Elaine is saying, this is all part of the evolution of the planet. My spirit guide Horus, who took the incarnations of Albion and Brutus of Troy, and he has shown me many things about planetary history that is not and will not be understood by human mindsets right now, which sounds feasible to me. The UK used to be occupied by giants, hence the stone circles, especially at the eras he went into the UK under these incarnations. The planet goes through epochs, which is governed by the galactic cycles and the shift. This is interesting, actually. And the shift in the axis mundi. Well, this is the whole thing. Everything kind of is a cycle, I guess, to a certain degree. And everything is changing. And we know that everything's changing. And we talk about climate change and things, but effectively, my belief, there isn't really climate change. The planet's always in a cycle of some description, and whether we're getting hotter or cooler probably depends upon the cycle that we're in. So my sort of feeling, and certainly my understanding from Chen, is that the galactic cycles that Elaine's talking about here is the case, and we as humans probably have a small effect on the planet. And I talked to Chen a while back about things like chemtrails, and he just laughed and said, just don't worry about it. If the planet wants to clear itself, it will clear itself. So, there's not much you can do as your species that will kind of stop the evolution of this ecosystem. And if we become a big problem on the planet, then the planet will clear us anyway. So, which of course it's done before when we talk about the Great Flood, coming back to the same concepts. So I think this is one of the interesting things, really. So Elaine is talking about implants placed on humans goes against universal law and the human free will choice. And behind every implant is an ET race controlling that implant. That's kind of my understanding, really. Horus informs me that no ET or spirit guide. Horus informs me that no ET can spirit guide if they have not had a human incarnation. Okay, so you're saying that spirit guides have to have been human, basically, which is interesting. I haven't really heard that before. That's certainly an interesting concept. I think, again, that the concept that people have been abducted, probably, and also have implants, would go against the universal law concept. And certainly for me, obviously, we're working every day, clearing people's fields, removing entities from them that are negative. So we certainly know that there is this negative influence that doesn't seem to comply with anything, particularly, certainly not universal law, because they're overstepping most of the time. So again, that would be kind of my understanding, Elaine, really, that there is this group of ETs that basically probably run most of the things behind the scenes, and they do so in quite a negative way, as we kind of know. And of course, they don't really comply with the rules that are in place, I guess. So Nadine's asking, is there an outer world organization called the Galactic Federation? I don't know the answer to that, but Chen can answer that for us. So we'll sidestep that one, Nadine. I'm sure there's probably lots of overarching or controlling organizations that are watching planet Earth and watching what goes on here. And again, I know when we talked about World War III sort of happening a while back, I asked Chen about it and just said, what's your opinion? And he said, basically, there won't be an overall World War III, certainly not a nuclear one, because it won't be allowed, because it will impact other species, other energies, other interdimensional beings that exist in the planes around Earth. So Chen said the Earth, we won't have a full nuclear war. There might be nuclear detonations like there has been before in certain places, but there certainly won't be a world war that's nuclear, because of course it will completely ruin the planet. And worse than that, it will take down other species that exist around the planet, in the planet, etc. So Chen's opinion was, don't worry about World War III being nuclear, because that won't be allowed to happen, which is an interesting viewpoint, of course, one that probably is quite nice to hear for some of us as well, really. So Muriel's talking about, I had something physical flying in the air into my mouth and lodged itself in the back of my throat. Outside in the middle of winter, not an insect. Felt like something that had been implanted in my throat 7 to 8 years ago. That's interesting. Muriel, thanks for sharing that. I guess you could go into meditation, ask your guys to show you what that is, and then ask them to remove it if it's negative. So again, this is the way that we tend to do things. Obviously, we tend to view the etheric field. you can do that through meditation or obviously working with your guides. And then if things are in there that shouldn't be there, obviously you've got, again, your own free will to ask your guides to basically clear and remove things from your field. And this is obviously what we do. We're continually bringing people back to a sovereign state every single day, because it's, in a way, working with spirit is quite easy to do that. And obviously the energies and entities that we're working with, is what they do. So it's kind of what we're here for, really. Okay, it was a physical object. Oh, that's interesting. So, yeah. But then again, like you say, without kind of knowing more about the subject, I guess there can be physical things. And I've certainly seen people with lumps on them that look like the size of a kind of, like the implants that we use for the animals. We chip our dogs and cats, and that implant is kind of whatever, like a centimetre long, like a thin little bullet tube that's kind of gets pushed under the skin, almost like a grain of rice, really. So I guess you can imagine that if we chip our animals, we're probably being chipped as well in some way or another. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise, really. Pink's asking, does everyone have a spirit guide, even a narcissist? That's a good question, Pink, actually. I think, yeah, my understanding is everyone on the planet that's human, because obviously we do have to quantify that there probably are people here that aren't human, certainly from my understanding. But anyone that's human has a spirit guide. So narcissists are here to learn, I guess, lessons and go through their evolvement the same as the rest of us, really. And I guess they get the opportunity to consider their options and maybe not become or not stay narcissist. But I think the general understanding is narcissists are kind of born that way. Their brain is different, their brainwaves are different, the way they think is different, so they probably don't change. And I guess most of us on this spiritual path, and I'm probably sure everyone on this call and everyone that listens to this podcast is probably aligned spiritually with our vibratory frequencies, and we've all probably been at the kind of hands of a narcissist at some point in our life. So I know I've had my fair share of narcissistic experiences with people, and I'm sure most of you have too. So it's a good question, though. Thanks for sharing that one. Pam said she dropped out. Tech problems. Well, yeah, again, I'm sorry, I'll be surprised if this whole podcast goes through without any problems, because, again, we are talking about kind of ancient aliens, extraterrestrial theory, forbidden archaeology, hidden history, sort of biblical, esoteric conversation, scriptures. There's a lot of things that we're covering on this particular chat that will be probably flagged up somewhere along the line by some type of AI normally, because everything now is AI, as we know. AI seems to have exploded across the planet, certainly from a tech perspective. And I guess there's obviously going to be a negative side to that AI in terms of filtering and deciding what we can and can't talk about. So we're going to talk about it anyway, basically, but we're going to try and sidestep any specific conversations that are kind of too detailed, so that we try and keep things generalized, and that way we're hoping to miss the filtering, which will be good. Okay, so I think we've sort of covered really the mystery of the human origins and starseeds, I think, as a kind of very tentative general conversation. So let's get Chen in for a chat and see what his opinion is, because I'm sure he'll be delighted to give us his version of things. So I'm just going to whip my watch off a moment, because we know that the watch needs to be off. Okay, so let's just grab my phone a sec. Okay, so I was going to set a timer. Try and keep Chen on time. Which will be good. Okay, so then let's get Chen in, see what his opinion is, and I'll be back in a while. Good day to all. It's my pleasure to be able to convene and have this weekly conversation. So interesting to be able to cover such a vast array of different topics that we basically discuss on a weekly basis. And of course, all of you that are interested in things, you must please send your requests in, because dear Andrew and Jane work very diligently behind the scenes to evaluate the conversations and the emails and the content that comes in from social media. And of course, then they speak to myself behind the scenes. So when we're deciding of the things that we would like to engage with and talk about, that's coming from your interest levels, and of course your understandings on things. And you must remember to quantify what young Andrew did correctly say earlier, is that we all have opinions, we all have versions of events of things, and we know that there is no real truth. My version of the truth is probably different from your version of the truth, and your version of the truth is different from someone else's version of the truth. So we know that events can happen, and all of the people watching that event will have a version of what happened. And of course, in time, those versions change slightly, or sometimes dramatically, of course. But the people that watch the event would all speak their version of the truth, and therefore things would be slightly obfuscated from that perspective. And of course, this obviously happens with history. As time goes by, we know that people that win wars will rewrite history to be favourable to them. That's obviously the case. People that lose the wars don't have a voice. And this, of course, happens all across all of your history on a daily basis. So, and now we know that we have a lot of technology behind the information. And of course, technology can change things subtly at first, but through generation after generation, of course, the understanding can evolve and change, and can be changed. The narrative can be manipulated. We all know this to be true. And we see this more and more. And this is why we had the conversation about artificial intelligence, AI, a few weeks ago, because we started to notice ourselves that there are favourable overlays being written into the code and the narrative, and it's slowly moving the human populace in a particular direction. Some of you may have noticed, if you ask the same questions on some of these AI engines, you're starting to see different responses. And it'll be interesting to have a narrative of maybe 10 very interesting questions about history and about different groups of people that do things or run things on the planet over time, and just start to see if week by week the narrative starts to change, because this will give you the clue that the actual program behind the scenes that delivers the information into your hand is actually being influenced in some way. And we're already seeing it starting to happen. So it's very interesting. Anyway, moving back to the conversation today. So again, this is a huge conversation. I'm sure we could be here week after week after week talking about different extraterrestrial entities, alien species, whether those species are in the physical, whether they're here in the interdimensional frequencies, what they do, and how they interact with the human populace. So there are lots and lots of conversations here, and what we're going to try and do today is to frame an answer to the question. So the question was about the Watchers. What are the Watchers, and who talks about them? Where did they come from? And what are they watching, of course? So the concept, if you're watching something, you're viewing something. So certainly from our perspective in spirit, we know, obviously, and I've said before, as young Andrew did say, that the evolution theory doesn't really work particularly well. And science knows this. Science has never been able to prove the concept of evolution to anyone, because we know that there's this missing link, and we've got no carbon dating, and we've got no archaeological finds that can prove that we took this single-celled amoeba effectively, and then we popped out with yourselves, Homo erectus, intelligent, genetic stranding, connected. So we know that there's a missing gap, and if there's a gap, it means something happened. So, and I said to young Andrew when he cursory threw me the conversation, well, did monkeys evolve? I said, well, if they evolved, of course, there would be no more monkeys on the planet. You have monkeys on the planet, so why would they still be monkeys if over thousands of years their species evolved? Of course, it was a very flippant conversation, really, from my perspective, and it was a very flippant answer, but it did answer the question that monkeys haven't evolved to human beings. So there was an intervention that happened, and that intervention was by an extraterrestrial species, off-planet species, that basically came to planet Earth, could see what was going on here. And again, certainly my understanding and the understanding of the groups that I work with is that they took control of some of the species, performed an intervention to create basically a person that was able to communicate on a semi-intelligent level that they could actually get to do their bidding. And of course, this is what would happen on many planets in different solar systems, is that we have a group of very intelligent, old extraterrestrial beings or entities, basically, that are moving around the galaxies, and they land somewhere. So you can imagine them landing on planet Earth, seeing this abundant planet with huge big trees, fauna, lots of species, and obviously water. Water is the key building block to a physical species. So many planets that have no water in your solar system, and there are many species that live on those planets, but they might not live there in the physical as you are, because of course there is no water, but their vibratory frequencies will still be there in different frequencies. So I exist in a frequency. You don't see me until I take over young Andrew's physical body, and then I can animate this physical body and I can speak to you all. So we know that Chen has an energy and a conscious awareness that exists outside of the physicality, but can become physical when given the opportunity. So the same type of concept that this group of extraterrestrials came to planet Earth, basically seeded via intervention a life form that has become yourself. So you're part of that genetic life form, the Homo erectus, the human being. And of course, what's happening now is, as new frequencies are coming into the planet, there's a lot of planetary change. A lot of you are being upgraded. And we talk about this concept of ascension, moving upwards, frequency change. So my version of ascension is maybe slightly different to other people's, but the concept being your frequency of vibration is increasing. People talk about moving from 4D to 5D, but generally what's happening, all of you are vibrating at higher frequencies. Well, not all of you, of course. Some people are negative, they stay at lower frequencies, but all of you that are on a spiritual path, working on your spiritual evolvement, are vibrating at higher frequencies. And that means you can reach higher frequencies to communicate with, but also your physical bodies are undergoing this transition. And many people listening today will know that they're suffering from a whole host of physical problems, from headaches, memory problems, memory issues, palpitations, all sorts of things, because your vibration is increasing. And we know that if we run a car at a fast speed, of course the car has more to do and probably goes wrong faster. If a car is just idling, it never goes wrong. If it was left on the drive running for years, it would just sit there, creating no real heat, but be able to run. If you race a car down a racetrack all day long, we know that components will break at some point because they're under stress and they get hot. And your bodies are the same. As your frequency of vibration increases, so it creates heat. And that heat has to be not decimated, the heat has to be delivered through the physical body, and obviously the spiritual aspect has to be locked into that frequency range too. So coming back to this range of beings, so there are a range of beings that control the planet, and they control most of the societal aspects of the planet. And we know this because we see this in society. We know that most of our organizations, certainly our finance organizations, have been controlled from day dot, really, by different groups of people. But those groups of people behind the scenes have entities that are connected to them, and those entities are running things from behind the scenes. And we know this because we see what they do. So this is what we always say. You must judge someone by what they do, not by what they say. So regardless of which particular organization says which particular things, and regardless of what they write inside their books or manuscripts or Bibles or religious text, just watch what that group of people does. If that group of people are taking people's lives and doing negative things, putting people in negative situations and control, then of course there must be a negative entity behind the scenes that it's connected to, that's allowing that to happen and running things. So rather like the puppet master, if you remember when you were children, you used to watch puppet shows, most of you most probably, and you wouldn't have seen the strings, and you certainly wouldn't have seen the hand behind the scenes moving the strings. And this is what's happening on planet Earth. There is a behind the scenes hand that is an extraterrestrial species that have not taken over the planet, because they were really here first to a certain degree. And we have said this in some of the communication and memes that I've put out for quite some time is that they were here before you. They performed an intervention to create your species. So you are the children, and that's what we say, the children of Nephilim, the children of the Watchers, the children of this ancient species. So you are the children of them, and of course that means they are in control behind the scenes to a certain degree. So the initial question was, who are the Watchers and what are they here to do? So my guidance to you is that there is a group of interdimensional entities. They were here physical at the time. They're no longer here in the physical vibration, but they have left their descendants here to manage things from their perspective. And lots of the resources and minerals are highly priced off planet Earth. So there's lots of things going on behind the scenes. I'm deliberately choosing not to say too much to try and keep this a general conversation, because young Andrew has made it very clear that from his perspective we need to be generalized about the conversations in this format, so the information is allowed to flow to those of you that are interested. If we become too detailed, then of course there will be a level of filtering that will most probably happen. So reading between the lines, if you're listening to this, you can see that there is a group of entities that are negative, that are here controlling most things, and they are the original source, really. But of course things have changed, and we do have organizations behind the scenes, part of which my team and I belong to. Someone talked about the Galactic Federation. Again, this name is banded around. We talk about the 12. There are lots of connotations of these organizations that are here, but I can assure you that from my perspective, I'm part of an organization, a group of entities that are here to help manage the planet. And our job is to work with your species, humanity, humans, in a positive way to basically help the vibration to rise. And I've said to young Andrew many times, our job, or the job that I have with him, and the contract actually that I have with him specifically, is that we will clear people one by one. Even though this seems a mammoth job, every single person whose energy has been cleared, negative attachments have been cleared from, and we bring them back to that sovereign state, their vibration so goes up, and then where they walk on planet Earth, they change the vibration of the planet because their vibration is positive as opposed to negative. So part of my role is to work with humanity, but the bigger part of my role, in fact, really, is to work with the planetary aspects. And we're here as a planetary team. And I belong to, and I'm part of a team of entities of all different species. So all of the species that you ever heard of, and lots more that you've never heard of, are here as a collective. And we effectively exist outside of your physical vibration, but we're certainly within the constructs of planet Earth. And our job is to review and watch. And obviously I and my team have chosen to perform interventions to clear these negative attachments and entities from your spaces connected to you. So people, even people that have lost their free will, have allowed entities, this negative aspect, to connect to them. They've generally done so in different states, maybe hypnotic states, maybe through substance, but generally they've given permission, or most of the time, for these entities to connect to them, and these entities then do that in that hypnotic state. And of course the entities basically feed off them, we know this. And again, this is not really the narrative for this conversation, but so be it to be said, is that part of my role is working with a team of interdimensional entities to help to control this negative aspect and to clear the frequencies and move this negativity off the planet. And the way that we do that is we clear people one by one, and then we're teaching other people through things like the Spirit Release Academy to clear more and more people. So as we train more and more practitioners, more humans get cleared, their vibrations come up, and so the planet's frequency rises. And what will happen, friends, one day is the planet's vibration will reach a threshold, and when that threshold is hit, negativity will leave of its own accord, because they won't be able to sustain their vibration because the planet's vibration will be too high. And this is the way that we've chosen to work. So in the past, there have been interdimensional wars, And we talk about this, we talk about planets that have been lost, and we talk about Tiamat and other things. But the way that we decided to work this time, light against the dark, good working against bad, was to not engage directly with the negative aspect. The negative aspect is left to do its thing. We're working with people that are actually using their own conscious awareness to book spiritual clearings, and then we are allowed to intervene on their behalf to clear and remove this negative influence from their field. And there is a spiritual war that's going on, and you're seeing this spiritual war playing out all over the planet in different places. And of course, we know that religion is one of the biggest control systems that's here on the planet. What started off to be quite positive, different fractions have been changed and obviously corrupted over time. So now lots of people are following blindly. And if you're part of a religious group or any organization for that matter, and the people that run that organization are doing and choosing to do negative things, it's in your name. You're aligning your energy with that group. Let's call it red. So there's a group called red. If you are behind red and you're part of red, and the leaders of red decide to go to war with a different type of people or a different organization, then your energy is in the group called red. And therefore you are picking up the karmic choices of the organizations that you're aligning yourself with. And of course, this is obvious. You must do. If you're behind a team, if your football team is blue, you're behind blue. If blue lose, you're very depressed and down for the day. If blue win, you're elated and positive. It's a wonderful day for you. The same is happening energetically. Whoever you align yourself with, whether that be religion, organizations, football teams, sports teams, you're aligning yourself with groups of people, and you're collectively connecting energetically, and your energy is being used by that group collectively. So again, if we look at some of the overarching organizations on the planet that are causing most of the problems, the people that are following them have no idea that their energy is being collectively used in a negative way. And worse than that, of course, they're also picking up all of the karmic aspects of what that organizational group do. So if you're killing, or if the organization you're part of are killing thousands of people, then you're obviously part of that. And the only way that you can detach yourself is you say, not in my name. So if you put a thought out spiritually that I might be part of group red, but I don't agree with what they're doing, so not in my name, you basically spiritually cut the contract and pull your energy back to yourself. So you're basically leaving energetically that group that's called red. So hopefully this is giving you all the kind of concept and the idea of what's going on behind the scenes that you don't get to see from a physical perspective, but certainly aligned from a spiritual aspect. Everything that you do, every person that you connect with, you cord. We know that you connect energetic cords. If you're in a room with someone and you're talking, you connect to each other, you cord to each other. If you're having a sexual experience with someone, you have very deep emotional connected cords through that sexual experience. Then, of course, if you have arguments and you don't see eye to eye from a conscious perspective, you have negative cords, negative connections, negative energy flows between you, or one person sucks off another. I know that someone talked about the narcissistic element, and obviously the same type of concept, that narcissistic people are very different. Young Andrew did manage to frame that quite right. He said they have a different brainwave because they're probably from a different species. And if you look at people that are narcissistic, who is in place in most of the top organizations of the world? Narcissistic people. Narcissistic people are running them. Narcissistic people in politics, narcissistic people in corporations, narcissistic people in religion. So narcissism is a thing, and it's because it's a different species generally that's involving or invoking itself when it incarnates into the physical body. And this is why if you're not narcissistic, you're probably a different species energetically to a narcissistic person, and you'll never understand how they think and what they do and how they can do quite negative things. But if you actually understood the species that's either connected to them, with them, or controlling them, you very soon understand why narcissistic people make the decisions and do the things that they do, because the energy behind them is very negative generally. Of course, that's a broad stroke. But you get the general gist, the concept being that narcissism is a different species of energy that's incarnated into the physical body. So obviously bringing you back to the conversation about the Watchers, the Nephilim, the Anunnaki, they're different species that are part of this planet's ecosystem. They've been here from day dot, before yourselves, of course, as we did say, and they're here to not really watch your evolution. They're here to control your evolution, and they're here to manage your evolution. And of course, there is at the moment a lot of things going on from a spiritual perspective. As I say, there's a spiritual war. And when there's a spiritual war happening, which of course there always has been, there's always been light and dark. There's always been positive and negative. Depending upon what you read, you'll hear different stories about different people. So in history, you have the good, you have the angelic aspect, you have the demonic aspect. There's always the opposing energies that are fighting effectively against each other. And the same as you have Chen, myself, and the team that I work with that have huge vibrational frequency. And this is why we're making such change on planet Earth and why we're trying to teach our techniques. And what we're not really doing, and I guess Andrew and probably young Jono don't really realize, they think that they're teaching a protocol and technique that was developed with my good friend Dr. Palmer, who stands beside me every day. Of course, what they're really doing is they're effectively invoking our energetic group of interdimensional entities to help to clear the planet. So you're using a 3D method to do that. So you're teaching practitioners how to connect to spirit guides like myself and my team that then have the permission to perform interventions on your behalf. So the Spirit Release Academy really is growing and evolving so quickly because, of course, it's aligned with this cleansing and clearing and purging operation that we're performing on planet Earth together. And that's what many of you I know that are listening here today are from, and you do. And our thanks go out to you for standing up. And as young Jono says, quite often hearing the call, because it's an energetic call. If you're here to work from a planetary perspective in this eternal fight really between light and darkness, then that's where you will align yourself to, and you'll find that that is your fit, and that is something that you then take into your next life. That will give you the reason to be in this life, whereas other things will probably not sustain you. This type of work will, for the people that are here to make this ordained change, really. And that's what we're here to do. That's what I'm here to do, is to connect with you all, to educate, to guide, and to make change. We're actually doing something. We're not just talking, not just providing information. Many of the entities that channel through different humans on planet Earth are here to provide guidance and information. We're here to work. That's the difference I see what I do as actual work, where we actually do something rather than just provide information. Not to say that providing information is negative. Of course, it's good to educate people. But the way that I work and the team that I work with are actually performing interventions every single day. And we're making change every single day. Other people are here as scribes to document what's happening. Some people are here to provide the overlay of what's going on. And again, depending upon the channel that you choose to listen to, will depend upon the information that's being provided and the guidance that's being given. But of course, you'll know by your own heart chakra what you align with. So when you listen to someone, you come into that frequency. If the things that I say today don't resonate with you, then this probably isn't your channel. You may need to find a different channel to listen to with the information that's for you. If this information is aligned and harmonized to your frequency, then you will probably sit there smiling and nodding and thinking, this is fascinating, this is what I'm interested in, this is me. And thank you for being that person. So know that I think the alarm's gone off, and I did override slightly. So I will say good day to you all. Hopefully it's been an interesting conversation. It's certainly a very interesting topic. And again, one that we need to tread quite carefully when we talk about and we tell you the information from our perspective. And of course, lots of the fine narrative probably needs to be documented and written, maybe in books rather than presented in these types of podcasts and communication vehicles, because that way they won't get filtered. And that would be something that I need to speak to Andrew about, is to document some of this information in book format that can't be filtered. So I will say good day to you all. It's been my pleasure to convene and to talk, and we will look forward to next week's conversation. So good day. Okay, so I'm back. So what are we on time-wise now? Chen slightly over. Oh, it's not too bad. Okay, we can go with that. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed the Chen's version of whatever he was talking about, which I probably actually will listen to this particular podcast because it is quite interesting. So a bit later, I might pop this on whilst I'm sat in the office. So I'm just going to go over the comments. So Geraldine's talking about finally made it to live. Well, thank you for coming, Geraldine. Much appreciated. Honoured to be here and listen to you. Love and light. And thanks for you protecting my six. That's okay. So we're all here to protect each other's six, basically. I think we need to these days. So, okay. Geraldine said, I want to be like you and Andy and Jane. How can I pay for a course and however long does it take to become what you all do? Good question. I guess different people on different tracks, really. So again, my kind of and Jane's track is different to yours, Geraldine. Really, everyone is on a different path, depending upon where you are, what you're doing, who your guides are, that sort of thing. Obviously, the first thing really is learning to connect to spirit to do this type of thing. So there are development courses that kind of teach you to protect yourself. And then for me, spiritual protection is the number one thing, really. And then learning to connect to a guide is the next thing. And then when you can do that, and you can start to communicate generally through meditation, then you can kind of move on to trance, really. And trance is the space when we kind of really start connecting to spirit guides and allowing them to come into our vibration and eventually get to a point that they can take over your physical body in the way that Chen's just done, obviously speak through you in the way that he's just been doing with me. And John is very good. He teaches a trance class. So if any of you at that sort of level looking to move from being able to see and talk to your guides in meditation, but want them to actually come through and actually speak through you, then that is quite a big step change really into kind of trance. So again, you need to find a trance teacher that actually knows what they're doing, protection being the number one thing, because you're about to give your physical body over to another entity that's going to kind of replace your spiritual consciousness. And we don't, so it's a bit like a car, isn't it, really? You wouldn't give your car keys to someone you don't trust because they could jump in and drive off. So trance is all about learning to protect the vehicle, which is our physicality and our kind of conscious awareness, and knowing what spiritual entity is going to come in and take over and speak for you, really. So that kind of process, again, different people, different lengths of time. For me, I was doing that kind of over about 5 years or something, I guess, going to kind of meditation groups and classes and stuff on a weekly basis. So again, things have kind of changed back from over the last 20 years when I was doing this and learning to do this. Things seem to be a lot quicker and faster now. So I think it's probably, I would imagine you probably could do that in a couple of years, really, if you put your time and your effort to it and work with people that you know, really. So Laurie's talking about, this is off, this is no trance, I'm watching you. Thanks for your opinion, Laurie. It's always good to have someone with an opinion. I'm sure you probably know a lot about trance. I'll be looking forward to reading your Facebook page and your website about your spiritual progression, as you've got an opinion, which is fabulous. So thanks for that. Geraldine's talking about the zapper, basically. So zappers are on the website. Again, I think, my opinion is really everyone should have a zapper. Zapper is basically like a little kind of device that you hold with two kind of copper rods, effectively designed by Dr. Hulda Clark, and she kind of wrote a book called The Cure for All Diseases, believing that if you put like a small electric current at a frequency through your blood, you kill parasites and viruses and bacteria and that kind of stuff. So the Hulda Clark book is available to buy on Amazon, probably all over the world. There's a whole load of information on it just about everywhere, really. So again, you can research zappers. Obviously, yeah, we sell them. So and of course, you can make them. They're not that difficult to make. You can buy the little kind of chips. If you're into electronics and things, again, you can kind of build a circuit board and make these things. So they're not kind of beyond anyone's scope that's good with kind of a soldering iron and those sorts of things and a bit of electrical knowledge. Or again, you can just buy them. There's plenty of people that sell zappers, really. Okay, so motivational mindset. This resonates. Thanks, Chen. So that's Naval. Thanks for your reply, which will be good. Okay, so Geraldine, awesome. Thanks, Andy. You're very lucky to have Chen as your guide. Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I only know my friend who became a spirit guide, but he's barely new, 3 years. Okay, interesting, yeah. So obviously that is the thing. I guess it's, like all things spirit related, really, there's different ways to do things, different ways to learn, different people to learn with. It's all about kind of looking at history, really. I mean, we've been doing this for kind of like near on 20 years. The website's been up for years. Run courses with lots of people. So there's lots of history that kind of documents how we do things and the way we do things and the way things work with Chen and what he speaks about and how he speaks about. So if you're going to follow people, just try and find someone that for you appears to be credible, because we know that in the spiritual Wild West, there's lots of people out there that claim to know things that probably know nothing at all. And of course, there's lots of people that have been deceived as well. There's lots of imposter guides connected to people. We certainly know from our experiences with the Spirit Release Academy over the last 3 years that we've been training practitioners that imposter guides become a real problem really very quickly, because of course people that are working on the spiritual positive aspect are going to attract attention from the negative side, and they're going to try and drag those people off course. And obviously we've seen this happen time and time again, and it is the reason why, certainly from our perspective in the academy, that we create the kind of community behind the scenes and we keep people together so there is lots of support, there's lots of help, there's emergency groups that you can ping to get cleared if you feel off, and you and your family. So there's a whole kind of support structure designed around the academy that myself and John have put together. Again, lots of other people teach things like SRT with no help, no support, no emergency group. You literally get kind of given a gun, told which way to fire it, and then you're kind of left on your own effectively, which I think is not a good idea in this field. But obviously everyone's on their own path, and we all need to kind of go through the spiritual lessons that come with the choices that we make effectively. Okay, so I'm going to say good day to you all. It's been good. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to catching you all again next week. Cheers, folks. Bye-bye.